You mentioned scientific truth. We have to talk about the most recent scientific controversy of the age, which is the COVID era. It feels like we are now just emerging from it, and finally some sort of perspective is beginning to be put in place. It feels to me like the authority and trust in science was enormously damaged during the COVID years by what I would call overreach, overclaiming by scientific authorities, and the concomitant backlash that came alongside it. So there are now millions, many millions of people who intuitively distrust whatever they are told by scientific authorities. I suspect many more millions than were there just 3 years ago. What's your overall sense of the COVID era before we delve into specific points around it? Do you think it was a moment of scientific glory, or do you think it was something that was a little bit problematic?
I think glory in that with unprecedented speed, vaccines were developed. And that was a tribute to molecular biology, where the fact that it was possible almost instantly to sequence the genome of the virus, and the genome was transmitted over the airwaves directly to labs all over the world, and labs in America and Britain and elsewhere immediately set to work developing vaccines with, as I said, unprecedented speed. That is magnificent and is a tribute to science, and was a glory of science. As for whether humans mistrust or trust science, that's their business, and I haven't done the sociological research.
But the vaccines, since you mentioned them, were enormously over-promised in terms of what their effect would be. They were originally sold to the public as 95% effective in the true sense of not getting infected with the virus if you take it. That was then endlessly revised downwards, and in the end we were told it didn't stop transmission, they only improved outcomes for vulnerable patients, which was very different to what was said originally. And meanwhile, there was this enormously heavy-handed policing of whether people should take them, including, in many places, mandates or near mandates. And that was very uncomfortable to watch. Do you think that's
the speed
true?
with which things were happening means that it's very difficult for people entrusted with authority to give advice. And normally there's much more time in order to examine all the evidence and give balanced, wise advice. When you're required to give advice almost instantly, there inevitably are going to be mistakes.
I'm so surprised that you're not more critical of that era. As someone who champions robust debate, champions learning from errors, admitting when things weren't exactly what you thought they were, it feels like it was a real classic example of just the politicization we're talking about, where authorities were way over the top.
Okay, well, probably then what they should have done, and with hindsight they should have done, said, well, actually, we don't know. We're uncertain. Our best advice we can give is so-and-so. But imagine what would have happened if they'd said that. Scientists don't know, right, you know. It's a very difficult situation to be in. Luckily for me, I wasn't in that situation. But I sympathize with people who are expected to give unequivocal yes-no sort of advice. Politicians will say, give us the facts. Is it a yes or a no? And you're expected to answer that. And if the true answer is we don't know, then that gives rise to yet more uncertainty and confusion. And so I sympathize with people if they're required to give a yes-no answer when they actually don't have the information at hand to do so.
It feels like the damage to scientific authority would have been much less if they had been more modest in their claims and allowed people to make decisions for themselves instead of mandating things that latterly proved not to be correct.
When you have to worry about whether the right policy is to do what Sweden did or to do what we did, It is a very difficult decision. It's a political decision. Politicians need advice from scientists. Scientists have to decide how to advise politicians. I think we need to be a bit more sympathetic. And I haven't noticed a great upwelling of mistrust in scientists as a result of it. I mean, for me, the triumph of the speed of the vaccination is what I take away from it.
Let's put a couple of tweets that you did during the pandemic on the screen. You said, some faith heads have a ritual of handling snakes, believing faith will protect them. When they're bitten, they deserve it. They alone suffer. Vaccine refusal is different. Others are endangered. It's as though their faith told them to release rattlesnakes in supermarkets. This was April the 6th, 2021. That kind of tone, which was very common among people of influence such as you, which was really vilifying people who were hesitant about taking the vaccine, in retrospect seems too much, doesn't it? Because maybe they were more right than we realized. Do you take that back?
Well, I've become aware that the conventional wisdom about vaccination, which is that it's a matter of altruism, because it's not simply a matter of saying it is my private business whether I'm vaccinated or not. And in the case of the measles vaccine, for example, it really is a matter of altruism, because if you don't get vaccinated, then you are part of the problem if there's a measles epidemic. I thought that would be the case with COVID, and it's now not entirely clear that was right. And so to that extent, I would take that back, yes.
Do you now have a view on lockdowns, since we're doing a little tour of the COVID era?
No, I don't have a view. I'm not
I should say, as a half Swedish person, we've paid a lot of attention to it, and you talk about double-blind trials and scientific process. The fact that Sweden has emerged from the longer period with the lowest excess death count of all of the European countries seems to be quite an important scientific point of evidence that possibly lockdowns were not necessary.
That could be true, and as John Maynard Keynes is said to have said, when the facts change, I change my mind. What do you do, sir? And so yes, there was a need for rapid decisions. The evidence was not yet in, and mistakes may have been made.